down on my knees again, surrendering.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another day of the One Bible, 1 Year. So today we are reading Deuteronomy 24, 25, and 26. So let's get started. Deuteronomy chapter 24. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him, having discovered something wrong with her. He writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. When she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. But if the second husband also turns against her, he writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away. And if she dies, the first husband may not marry her again, for she has been defiled. That would be detestable to the Lord. You must not bring guilt upon the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession. A newly married man must not be drafted into the army or be given any other official responsibilities. He must be free to spend 1 year at home, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. This is wrong to take a set of millstones, or even just the upper millstone, as security for a loan if the owner uses it to make a living. If anyone kidnaps a fellow Israelite and treats him as a slave or sells him, the kidnapper must die. In this way you will purge the evil from among you. In all cases involving serious skin disease, be careful to follow the instructions of the Levitical priest. Obey all the commands I have given them. Remember that the Lord your God did what your Lord your God did to Miriam as you were coming from Egypt. If you lend anything to your neighbor, do not enter his house to pick up the item he is giving as security. You must wait outside while he goes in and brings it out to you. If your neighbor is poor and gives you his cloak as security for a loan, do not keep the cloak overnight. Return the cloak to its owner by sunset so he can stay warm throughout the night, and bless you, and the Lord your God will count you as righteous. Never take advantage of poor and destitute laborers, whether they are fellow Israelites or foreigners living among your towns. You must pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and are counting on it. If you don't, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and it would be counted against you as sin. Parents must not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor children of the sins of their parents. Those deserving to die must be put to death for their own crimes. True justice must be given to the foreigners living among you and the orphans, and you must never accept a widow's garment as security for her debt. Always remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you from your slavery. That is why I have given you this command. When you are harvesting your crops and forgets to bring it in a bundle of grain from your field, don't go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. When the Lord your God will bless you, then the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. When you beat the olives from your olive trees, don't go over the boughs twice. Leave the remaining olives for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. When you gather the grapes in your vineyard, don't glean the vines after they are picked. Leave the remaining grapes for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt. That is why I am giving you this command. Chapter 25. Suppose two people take a dispute to court. The judges declare that one is right and the other is wrong. If the person that in the wrong is sentenced to be flogged, the judge must command him to lie down and be beaten in his presence, with the number of lashes appropriate to the crime, but never give more than 40 lashes. More than 40 lashes would publicly humiliate your neighbor. You must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. If two brothers are living together on the same property and one of them dies without a son, his widow may not be married to anyone from outside the family. Instead, her husband's brother should marry her and have intercourse with her to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law. The first son she bears to him will be considered the son of the dead brother, so that his name will not be forgotten in Israel. But if a man refuses to marry his brother's widow, she must go to the town gate and say to the elders assembled there, my husband's brother refuses to preserve his brother's name in Israel. He refuses to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law by marrying me. The elders of the town will then summon him and talk with him. If he still refuses and says, I don't want to marry her, the widow must walk over to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal from his foot, and spit in his face. Then she must declare, this is what happens to a man who refuses to provide his brother and children. Afterward in Israel, his family will be referred to as the family of the man whose sandal was pulled off. If two Israelite men get into a fight and the wife of one tries to rescue her husband by grabbing the testicles of the other man, you must cut off her hand, show her no pity. If you must use accurate scales when you weigh out merchandise, and you must use full and honest measures. Yes, always use honest weights and measures so that you may enjoy a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. All who cheat with dishonest weights and measures are detestable to the Lord your God. Never forget that the Amalekites did to you as you came from Egypt. They attacked you when you were exhausted and weary, and they struck down those who were straggling behind. They had no fear of God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you the rest from all your enemies in the land he is giving you as a special possession, you must destroy the Amalekites and erase their memory from under heaven. Never forget this. Chapter 26. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession, and you have conquered it and settled there, put some of the first produce, even from each crop you harvest, into a basket and bring it to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. Go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, with this gift I acknowledge to the Lord your God that I have entered the land he swore to our ancestors he would give us. The priest will then take the basket from your hand and set it before the altar of the Lord your God. You must then say to in the presence of the Lord your God, my ancestor Jacob was wandering Aramean, who went to live as a foreigner in Egypt. His family arrived few in number, but in Egypt they became a large and mighty nation. When the Egyptians oppressed and humiliated us by making us their slaves, we cried out to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. He heard our cries and saw our hardship, toil, and oppression. So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and a powerful arm, with overwhelming terror. And with miraculous signs and wonders he brought us to this place and gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. And now, O Lord, I have brought you the first portion of harvest you have given me from the ground. Then place the produce before the Lord your God, and bow to the ground and worship before him. Afterward you may go and celebrate because of all the good things the Lord your God has given to you and your household. Remember to include the Levites and the foreigners living among you in the celebration. Every third year, you must offer a special tithe of your crops. In this year of the special tithe, you must give your tithes to the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows, so that they will have enough to eat in your towns. Then you must declare in the presence of the Lord your God, I have taken the sacred gift from my house and given it to the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows, just as you commanded me. I have not violated or forgotten any of your commands. I have not eaten any of it while in mourning. I have not handled it while I was ceremonially unclean, and I have not offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the Lord my God and have done everything you commanded me. Now look down from your holy dwelling place in heaven and bless your people Israel and the land you swore to our ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, the Lord your God has commanded us to obey all these decrees and regulations, so be careful to obey them wholeheartedly. You have declared today that the Lord your God and anyone you have promised to walk in these ways and obey his decrees, commands, and regulations. And to do this, everything he tells you, the Lord has declared today that you are his people, his own special treasure, just as he promised, and that you must obey all his commands. And if you do, he will set you high above all the other nations he has made. He will receive praise. Then you will receive praise, honor, and renown. You will be a nation that is holy to the Lord your God, just as he promised. Okay, guys, that was our reading. That was really short. 3 chapters, only 10 minutes. Well, more towards 11, but still. I think that was pretty fast. So, today we read chapter 24, 25, and 26 of Deuteronomy. And so, again, as I put in the picture today, Deuteronomy is basically a book of remembrance. And because, as I said in these last few days, this entire book is basically talking about all the laws, tweaking them a little bit, and just repeating them because in those 40 years, the children have not ever seen them get out of Egypt. They've never seen God's miraculous hand, like giving the manna or things of that sort. Well, probably giving the manna, but like all the different miracles that the Lord has done throughout this time. So basically he's got to restate it, and this is Moses again talking and to the people that have not heard these laws already. So kind of going into the bigger laws, I could say, in these, a lot of the chapter 24 is a lot about when you're giving a loan, or basically just the men with men. Like you cannot kidnap. Any cases with skin disease, you have to do exactly what it says, which is like wait 7 days to see if it's deeper than the skin, or just like how we read in, I believe that was Exodus or Numbers. And then again, it's a lot about the responsibility, like helping your neighbor, keeping him safe. Like if you take their cloak, which is basically their only place of warmth if they're poor, give it back by sundown, because that's their only warmth. Otherwise they would die, and it just wouldn't be good for the both of you. It also talks about divorce. So basically, if a man divorced a woman and then she goes to marry another man and he divorced her, then the first man can't marry her again. And I believe she cannot marry at all again. Otherwise it would be basically defiled and testable. So again, and then a newly married man, he cannot do anything official. So like he can't be drafted into the war, and he can't say, I don't know, be a politician or anything official of that sort for 1 year, because he has to please his wife, and he's basically just got to provide for her as the new husband for her. And then parents cannot be put to death for the sins of their children, and vice versa. Children can't be put to death for the sins of their parents. True justice for every people, like not just the Israelites, but foreigners. So this basically excludes racism as far as the judicial system. And then harvesting your crops if you forget to bundle a certain one, or again, if you don't like get all the stuff, like leave some, like a little bit, for the orphans and the poor, and like the people who cannot afford getting that. And again, it's just sharing the wealth throughout, because this land is for everyone. It's not just for you. And so that's like what this entire thing's for. It's just remembering God. And then as we go into chapter 25, it's talking about basically, so if there's a dispute then and then there's the certain lashes instead of the years in prison like they do now, and you cannot have more than 40 lashes because then it would just be humiliating the person. If two brothers are living together, I thought this one was kind of cool and kind of weird at the same time, but it's just to keep the population going and so the brother does not lose his name. So say there's two brothers. One brother, they both have wives, but the one brother dies. The brother who's still alive, he has to marry his dead brother's wife, and he has to have a child with her in order to keep his name going. So that, like, say someone's last name was, I don't know, John. I'm just gonna say that. His last name's John, but the father dies, or the brother dies. So now John can only be passed on by the wife, but the wife loses her name. So then the name will no longer exist, but that's why they have to have the son. And in order to keep the last name John alive in the city. So again, you just can't cheat your neighbors and anybody that's in the entire system, you could say. Just don't cheat them. It's again, you have to be honest. You have to help your neighbors if they're poor. You got to share the wealth, and by sharing the wealth, you have to make sure all the scales are right. I know there's like certain ways to make a scale read wrong so that you get less food, you could say, for more money, because it looks like it's 5 pounds even though it's only 4 pounds of food. So there's different things like that, so just don't cheat. And then in chapter 6, our final chapter, I was talking about an offering that you had to give. So when you enter the land, the first crop that you get, you have to bring in a basket to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses. And then there you give the gift to the priest that's on duty, and you say, with this gift I acknowledge to the Lord your God that I have entered the land he swore our ancestors would give us. And then he takes the basket and he sets it before the altar, and then you have to say again, you must then say in the presence of the Lord your God, my ancestor Jacob, who was a wandering Aramean, who went to live as a foreigner in Egypt. His family arrived few in number, but in Egypt they became a large and mighty nation. When the Egyptians oppressed and humiliated us by making us slaves, we cried out to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. He heard our cries and saw our hardship, toil, and oppression. So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and a powerful arm, with an overwhelming terror, and in miraculous signs and wonders. He brought us to this place and gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. And now, O Lord, I have brought you the first portions of our harvest you have given me from the ground. And then you just place it before the presence of the Lord God, and you have to celebrate. And again, you have to celebrate with the Levites in your city, because they don't get any land, so they have to pay for their land, but they also win because are equal, because they're still like God's people, and so they got to work with the tabernacle, and then they get certain portions of the food from the tabernacle. So that was pretty much it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.